the American dream used to be to own a home. Now it's to make money from a lawsuit. It sounds pessimistic, but.
Hey everyone, I am here today with Pete Bouchard of Allstate Insurance, and I'm so excited to have him on and talk to him today about everything insurance. He's actually been my own personal insurance agent for my homeowners and my auto for years and years. And I get so many questions on a regular basis from clients and prospective buyers about insurance, and people just don't realize the importance of it. And people just don't know what they don't know. So I'm really excited to have you here today, Pete, and I'm excited to get into it.
Awesome. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah. Well, you've been a great insurance agent for me and helped me, my family and I in some many things as we've kind of gone through our life with cars, with houses, insurance, and a lot of stuff that I didn't even know. And I'm in the financial industry and I've learned a lot. So awesome. I'm excited for us to be able to kind of talk through this, and I'm sure our viewers will find out a lot of stuff that they don't actually already know. So
all right, let's do it.
All right. Well, I would love to start off with, tell me a little bit, just share with our viewers a little bit about yourself. Sure. How did you get into insurance, and how have you evolved in your career?
So I grew up in Massachusetts, so I've got a little bit of an East Coast style to me, which I think helps in this misunderstood industry. Yeah. I went to college in my hometown in Massachusetts, and after college I moved out here to Washington to just try a new thing and get away from home, mom and dad. Mm-hmm. And I fell into a job with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and long story short, the Enterprise Rent-A-Car general manager went off to become an Allstate agent, and he called me every day for like 6 months. You got to do this. You got to do this. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to own a business. I studied economics. The one thing I learned was whatever you get paid, you're worth more than that. And I'm like, that's called profit, right? I'm like, that's what I want. I want both. Yes, so profit. He brought me on, and I did what he said to do. Most of it was calling on mortgage brokers like you. And next thing I knew, Allstate was offering my own agency, and hit the ground running. And that was 1995, a couple years ago.
Nice. And you're right in the Seattle area. You love to play hockey, follow the Kraken. Yep. So Seattleite through and through for 30 plus years.
Yep. I still have my Boston sports blood, but the Kraken came here, and I've been playing hockey since I was 5, and it's what keeps me looking 21 instead of 106. And, nice. So actually, most of my customers I run into at Kraken games or at some random other sports event. It is still a small town.
It is. It's a big, small town, but it's changed a lot in 30 years. Like I'm born and raised here, and it's crazy when, I look around and things are so different in the whole Puget Sound area. A lot more houses, a lot more people. Things have changed a lot in 30 something years.
And that's trickled into the insurance industry, which I'm sure we'll probably tap on, because more people, more houses, more crime, more all kinds of stuff. That unfortunately we see the dark side. It's just like police and firemen, but.
Well, and this is the thing I think that a lot of people don't realize, like whether you're a renter or you're a homeowner, you need insurance, because those kind of things can happen. Like there's break-ins, you can get, your belongings stolen, you can get your car stolen. Mm-hmm. But when you buy a house, people kind of look at insurance, like clients will say, they're like, oh gosh, it's like the necessary evil, because it's literally one of the things you absolutely cannot close on your house without having insurance if you're getting a loan. Right. And you certainly shouldn't close on it, even if you're paying cash. You definitely need insurance but I think a lot of people don't realize what all is covered under the umbrella of a homeowner's policy, because once you now own an asset of a home, you take on a lot of liability. And I would love to have you just kind of talk about, all the different types of policies, and also, what is covered under homeowners, and what do people need to know that they just don't know?
So the best way, you use the word homeowners, obviously you're in the mortgage business, so you deal with that, but the general term is property insurance. So we all have auto insurance for our cars, most people own a car, not everyone nowadays. But like you said, one of the reasons why I got in this business is every single person that is a living, breathing human either rents, owns a house, a condo, or maybe a mobile home. So everyone's a prospect. It's not like selling a car where someone might not need one, or selling a home they can't afford it. But to get back to your point, so we all start out and we rent. As soon as you move out of mom and dad's house, normal operating procedures, you get a little renter's policy. It's 10 or 20 bucks a month. Usually saves you off your auto insurance. And it covers what little things you have. And let's be honest, back when you and I were kids, we didn't have much in the car. They would steal your car stereo because that was my most expensive asset. Yes, the pop in, pop out, or your speed detector thingy. But nowadays we all have laptops or cell phones or other gadgets or our gym stuff. And where do we store it? Well, we store it in our car. And unfortunately, especially during COVID, there's a lot of people that think that what's in your car is free game, and they borrow it for a while and don't return it. And in the meanwhile, they break your window. So when it comes to homeowners insurance, most people think of their home because that's a tangible asset. But you need insurance for a renter because your stuff might be at your partner's house. It might be at your house. You could be on a trip or cruise. I had one customer, they had their car loaded with stuff. They were going on a 1 month or 2 week cruise. They had everything they had. And they went to go get some food, and they came back and everything was gone. They had already sold their home, but they were smart enough to reach out, and we sold them a renter's policy. They were in their mid-50s. They weren't like renters, but they just didn't own a home. So their renter's insurance provides coverage for that anywhere in the world, on a cruise ship, in the car, in your house. So again, renters isn't just about your specific domicile, but it could be your car or a mobile opportunity. Then there's homeowners. So home, now you're going to insure the dwelling itself. And what are you insuring? The value, the tax assessment, the used value because it's a depreciated asset? No, we're insuring what it costs to rebuild your home. So whether you buy $1 million home that's 100 years old, well, if it burns to the ground and we rebuild it, if you're in Queen Anne, 500,000 of that might be land, right? But it might cost $1 million to rebuild it. Well, now your house is worth, in theory, 1.5 million. So ironically, you can, one way or another, benefit from that, but legally. So then there are condos, which is probably the most misunderstood.
Oh, for sure.
It's a glorified renter's policy in the sense that you're not insuring the building. The HOA that your lender will make you get proof of, but you don't pay for, only rebuilds your building. It doesn't replace all of your contents. It may or may not cover upgrades that you've done to it. And you talked about liability. It doesn't cover liability. That would be the third big thing. So you have your home, all of your stuff inside it, and then liability. In Western Washington, there are no $300,000 or $400,000 homes. If you own a home, it's going to be 500 or more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All you need is a slip and fall, a dog bite, a trampoline, any incident. If you're legally liable or negligent and someone gets injured, I don't care if it's your neighbor or your friend. This sounds bad, but the American dream used to be to own a home. Now it's to make money from a lawsuit. It sounds pessimistic, but my point is that person, if they're legitimately injured, let's say it's a teenager who's going to go off to college and have a career, they may never work again. They're going to come guns blaring. And you do get a certain amount of liability with your property insurance, whether it's renters, homeowners, or condo. But an umbrella policy around here, it's not just to keep you dry like today, but it's to protect your assets from possible claimants. And most of us can imagine a car accident, but I can give you a testimonial. I had a customer that was like I do all the time, playing golf, rented a golf cart. You don't own it. You don't sign a big agreement. You just tell them you're taking it out. Well, he was the passenger he was the driver. The passenger was in the right seat. As you know, they don't have doors and windows and seat belts. Long story short, just to be clear, it wasn't my customer, it was another Allstate customer, but the story goes that the driver was approaching his ball, the passenger was looking at his ball, the passenger went to get out, and the driver turned hard left to go to his ball. He fell out and he rolled. 99% of the time, you get a dirty golf shirt and a good funny story to tell on the 19th hole. But unfortunately, he struck a tree and broke his neck on a scene and died.
Wow. Yeah.
Most people think your car insurance would cover that. Well, it's not a four-wheel private passenger automobile, the definition of a car. Well, homeowners or renters or condo all come with personal liability. He's legally liable for that person's injuries. And a homeowner's policy generally maxes out at $500,000. You can get $1 million sometimes, but a death of an wage earner is not 300 or 400 or 500. So a personal umbrella policy, which is called excess liability, is what saved this person's bacon. And they did have one thing, fortunately. Now,
what does something like that, like for example, a injury like that, what is the liability amount? Like what's the type of settlement amount that the person might get that people should be prepared for?
Let's say the average Microsoft, Amazon person makes $200,000-300,000 a year. I mean, you pretty much have to make $100,000 a year to live around here. So $200,000 or $300,000's not a ton anymore. Well, if that person misses even a year of work, first of all, they're going to have at least $100,000 in medical injuries. They're going to have to do physical therapy. They're going to have potentially the loss of a limb or the loss of a use of a limb, or at least some kind of pain. I tore my ACL playing hockey, and it was I think it was $50,000 between physical therapy, the surgery. I mean, I'm not talking about going to Harborview on life support or something. So $500,000 doesn't go anywhere. And if you make $200,000 or $300,000 a year and you're 35, that you're expected to make that for another 20 years, you can do the math. $1 million isn't enough. Now, where I thought you were going with that question, which you might be, is, well, how much does $1 million umbrella cost? Is that $500 a month? Is that $10,000 a year? The funny thing is, the first time I gave a quote to someone, I said it was I told him it was $200, and he goes, "Oh my God, a month? That's a great price." And I said, No, that's for a whole year. He goes, "What?" He goes, "How much is $5 million?" And so, so nowadays a personal umbrella policy for the normal person is $300 to $400 a year.
Which is nothing.
You have your cell phone laying there. That's about 2 months of that bill, right?
It's nothing for the peace of mind to know that you're covered. Now, fortunately, I would imagine, and you are definitely can speak to this more than I can. I would imagine an incident like what happened on that golf course is probably pretty rare.
Correct.
However, it does happen. And if it does happen, you have insurance for the crud moments like that.
It only takes one in a lifetime to mess up your financial plan.
$300 a year to make sure that you are covered for something like that. And this is the thing is when people buy homes and we tell them, look, you need to get homeowners insurance. I always say to them, like, it's really important you pick an agent, don't pick a company, because you need to have a personal relationship where you can pick up your phone, talk to the agent, because when you get into, what I call the oh crap moments where something has just happened and you do not know what to do. I mean, after you get through and you call the first responders and all that, and you realize, okay, this is an insurance event. You want to be able to pick up the phone and call your actual agent and have a conversation versus 1-800. You called it a great funny thing. 1-800, who are you, I think?
That's my term.
You're on a phone tree. Trust me, you don't want to be on a phone tree trying to call an insurance company at, who knows what time, and not even able to really talk to them and find out what to do. Because those things happen. But homeowners cover so much more than just like if the house burns down or if there's a burglary. It covers all of these types of incidences that most people have never even thought about. Like the golf cart one, when you first told me that story, I was like, I would never have imagined that. But That kind of stuff happens
A
all
fun
the
day
time.
out on a golf course can end up being life changing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you have some crazy stories that would love to actually have you share some just stories that, are probably just good for people to hear so
Okay.
they realize.
A lot of people probably heard about this story. It was a famous actor, at least how I was told the story, but he was skiing, and I'm a pretty good hockey player. I'm a pretty good golfer. My ball does go wayward every once in a while, but I'm not that good a skier, and so I can see this. But the guy was going downhill, out of control. He bumped into another skier. That other skier got bumped into a tree. He didn't die, but he's a paraplegic.
Oh, wow.
And I don't remember the exact actor, but people that watch the show probably know what I'm talking about, or maybe it didn't hit the news as much. But first of all, you have a wealthy person who's going to get sued.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
he wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't your typical drunk driver, speeding, talking on the phone, all the things that we all assume is what gets people in the hot water. But that's an example where it's like the golf. Maybe you're not a golfer. Maybe you're not a skier. There was another incident with a mountain biker, got out of control, ran into somebody. When you're going 30, 40 miles an hour down a mountain and you hit somebody,
Yeah.
the funny thing is renter's insurance alone provides $100,000 worth of coverage for liability. It's free. It comes with the policy. And that's not even why people buy it. Sure, that's not going to help with a fatality, but it did with the unfortunately, I knew the people involved with the bike incident, but nobody got seriously injured. But there was a trip to Harborview, and today that could be $100,000 by itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are crazy. Those are crazy stories people don't think about. I mean, they go skiing every day and things work out just fine. And one of the things that people will say to me, wow, insurance is so expensive. And there's a lot of factors that go into the cost of insurance. And we've known, especially, the last few years, as inflation has increased, insurance premiums have skyrocketed. I'd love to have you talk about that. Just kind of what are the factors that go into like a premium, and what sort of trends factor in overall? Because as we evolve, like as we've gotten cell phones, there's issues that come with that. And
Right.
just how do those kind of factors and trends factor in?
Well, the thing is 30 years ago when I did this, if you really think about it, there was no internet.
Right.
So you didn't have a computer, you didn't have a cell phone, never mind the access to that data. That's a whole nother segment. But let's be honest, I joked about the car stereo thing. What did you have at home or in your car that was worth stealing? People would steal your CDs. Like my kids don't even know what a CD are. They might think it's a certificate of deposit if I've trained them well about
You
finances.
can't even get computers anymore
No.
that have CDs on
But
them.
we have more ways to spend our money. I mean, I've had customers with $600 or probably more purses that they stick in the back seat of their car to go into the gym. They take their cell phone with them, but they leave that in there. And I'm probably going off on a tangent, but there are just more reasons to break into someone's home. And it's funny because we were talking about myths and misconceptions. Most insurance claims are minor.
Yeah.
But when you have a water pipe that breaks, it's the emotions more than the finances. It may not even be an insurance claim, but you don't know that. You don't know who to call. I mean, yeah, we know to call a plumber, but then, who's going to get the water cleaned up? Who's going to fix? And if you have an agent, a local agent, not just me, but all of us have the old-fashioned Rolodex where we say, if you need water mitigation, you call these guys. If you need a plumber, you call this person. Let's assume for whatever reason it's not an insurance matter. Sure, you have to pay for it, but at least you don't have to recreate the wheel and go on Angie's List or something to find.
Yeah.
And back to your point, ever since COVID has exposed it, we don't have enough contractors. So if they're going to come out in a rush, they're going to charge you. You don't have time to shop around. So,
Yeah.
what goes into rates. Most people don't know this, but we can't just flip a switch and lower your rates or raise your rates. There's an actual insurance commissioner who's an elected official, which, by the way, I think in 3 days. The old one is not coming back, which is a different story. But in the end, we all insurance companies have to substantiate any changes in rates. We've had unprecedented weather events. Mm-hmm. We all know that. No one wants to think that trickles down to your home insurance in Woodinville, but it does. Mm-hmm. We've had fires. There was a fire in Spokane that was probably as bad as the one in Hawaii that everyone in the world heard about. Yes. But I bet if you didn't live in Spokane, you didn't know about this fire. No. I drove through it.
Wow.
All the houses, I forget, it was Lake.
Interesting. No, I didn't even hear about this.
No, it's just off you can see it from I-90 when you drive over. So when you have an entire neighborhood, let's say 50 houses minimum, I think it was 100, burnt to the ground.
Wow. Yeah.
Statistically, I live in Shoreline. I talked to the fire department. There's a lot more than 100 homes in Shoreline. Mm-hmm. Typically, one home burns to the ground a year, which means it rarely ever happens.
Yes.
But when you have 100 homes in one neighborhood, wiped out, complete loss, that is going to affect things. Mm-hmm. The difference is those are covered by your Allstates, your State Farms, your Farmers, not FEMA, like the hurricanes we hear about. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went off on a tangent. Maybe I lost my... Yeah. You want to redirect me?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. This is exactly the information that people don't realize is that there's so many factors that go into what cause premiums of insurance to increase. I mean, it's the natural disasters like you talk about, and you get unprecedented claims that come in from like a big fire that happens. And then talk about the financial piece of it over the last 4 years where we've had inflation that we hadn't seen in 40 years. And that causes the cost of materials to increase. It causes labor rates to increase. It causes, and like we were talking about, where there are not enough plumbers, there's not enough electricians, there's not enough contractors, there's not enough painters. Those trades, in many cases, can name their price. And if you're calling them because you have an emergency and you need them out now, they can really name their price. And all that,
it's take it or leave it.
Yeah, it goes into the cost of insurance because you rely on those contractors. You know, you have the contacts, but you're relying on those contractors to be able to do the work. So it's going to get passed on into the premiums.
And on that note, I mean, I have it wasn't an insurance claim. I was repainting my house. And when I called, they literally said, take it or leave it. For example, I think the first bid was $25,000. Now I used to paint houses. That would be like a whole summer's worth of revenue, but it was going to take them 3 days to spray it. And I was like, I guess that's the going rate. And I said, well, I'll be smart. And I called 2 other people. The next one was 20. The next one was 12. I'm like, what are you doing for 12 or not doing, more importantly, than he was going to do for 25? He goes, well, who was the guy you called for 25,000? I said, so-and-so. And he goes, well, they're booked up for 6 months. They'll come to your house for 25 instead of the other guys for 12 because they can just pick and choose. He goes, I need the work. I still make money at 12,000. I said, well, he must make a lot more at 25. And he goes, yeah, probably. So, that's not even an emergent situation, but unless I was going to paint it myself, and I wasn't going to do that. But we haven't talked about car insurance. Yeah. You talked about plumbers, electricians. Let's be honest. Your day job is in mortgage business, real estate, but electric cars. Yes. They cost more to buy. We all want to change the world. We all want to get rid of a carbon footprint. The regular wage to fix a gas-powered car is $80 an hour. That's the going wage.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And body shops can't get employees to stay. It takes 2 to 3 years of education. They actually go to technical school. You can't just...
To learn how to work on
because a lot of these shops closed during COVID or got bought up by big conglomerates who are charging more. Yeah. But I had a customer that had a BMW, not even a Tesla or something you'd really think of an electric car. And it was $150 an hour. to get it worked on. And it was only 3 body shops in Western Washington that had the credentials to work on an electric car. And I'm not a car guy. I'm like, it's body work. What's the difference? Well, I have a friend that owns a body shop. He told me. So literally that's twice the $80 rate for a regular BMW. It doesn't matter if it's a BMW, it's gas versus electric. Yeah. Well, I tried, Allstate wasn't going to pay that much. And I thought Allstate was a bad guy. Well, I called 3 other shops and they were either more or they didn't do it. So when there's only one game in town, you got to do it. Mm-hmm. So, people buy these cars, they do save money on gas and lube and filters, but insurance is going to, if the labor is twice as much.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to pay twice as much premium wise? Even a 20% increase is a good deal in my opinion. But COVID has brought out, used cars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The reason why you and I like the mortgage business is homes appreciate 9 times out of 10, right? Or at least in the long run. Yeah. Cars depreciate. Uh-huh. But during COVID, there were times when even boats and RVs, which by the way, going off on another tangent, we had more RVs stolen between 20 and 24 than we had stolen in the 20 years prior to that. And it wasn't so they could go camping. Do you want to know what they did in those RVs?
Yeah.
Can you take a guess? We do have a large homeless.
Yeah, so, people lived in them.
Right.
Because they were homeless. Or
that's what we think.
Yeah, or
they get towed to a remote area and they put a meth lab in them.
Wow.
We all saw Breaking Bad,
Yes.
The fact of the matter is the same motorhome before COVID was worth 20, 30% more after COVID because of the supply and demand. Everyone wanted boats and RVs. So it's an upside down market where let's say you paid 50 grand for the motorhome and it's 10 years old and now it's worth 45. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It used to be worth 20, right?
Yeah, it would depreciate.
Well, when you do a meth lab and one of my old employees had her RV stolen, they put a meth lab in. It's an instant total loss.
Right.
Because you can't go, it's a health hazard. Mm-hmm. And by the way, there was a point during COVID when cars were being stolen, they had to have a $5,000 drug test to make sure that there was no drug in the air or whatever.
Cooking
before they had touched the car.
Wow.
These are unprecedented expenses.
Has to pay all those claims
right.
up.
We can't say no, we can't pay for that. And so there were body shops that said it's $5,000 before you show up. Whether it was 3 or 5, it was an additional cost, even if the repairs were 3.
Yeah.
And so I could go on for hours.
Oh
with
my
that,
gosh, that's fascinating. See,
us agents do not control the price.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
We as a society do. Sure. More crime, more distracted driving, more cars on the road. Mm-hmm. I have 2 teenagers.
That was
the statistics don't lie.
So the cell phone revolution has had to transform auto insurance. I have to imagine. Is that true or not true? Would you say?
I think as a society, we want to assess blame. Mm-hmm. And I hear it all the time. Oh my God, she was on her cell phone. Well, being on your cell phone, even hands-free, look at the cars now. The navigation systems, I've seen them. I don't want to pick on Teslas. They're bigger than my first TV.
Yeah.
And you can watch a movie on those things. And, they pop up. Even on the way here, I had the app where it tells you there's an accident or whatever. I spent half my time pushing a button saying, yes, it's still there. Leave me alone. Stop beeping.
Yes.
It is distracting you. I believe there are statistics that, and this is not to condone drunk driving, but there's statistics that if you're on your phone, it's as bad, if not worse, than having a couple of drinks.
Wow. Yeah.
At least when you've had a couple of drinks, you're probably staring out the window, hopefully saying, I should probably pay attention a little bit more. Again, not condoning that, but.
Well, and hopefully nobody's drunk driving.
Has this happened to you? I drove home one time and I had a really detailed conversation actually with a customer. And I pulled into the house I moved away from 5 years ago.
Yes.
I literally showed up to the driveway. I'm like, oh my God, what is that? It's autopilot, right?
Yeah, it's autopilot.
Now, what did I miss on the whole ride there? Obviously, I didn't run over a child or something, but it's if you think about it, I was on autopilot. I'd done that ride hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And as good as a driver as I may think I am, I literally showed up at the wrong house, and it was kind of enlightening. You know?
No, I've done something similar to that, where you're so into the conversation that you go, wait, where am I going?
Yeah.
Or realize
you miss an exit,
took the wrong turn.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And I have to imagine, it's interesting because this younger generation seems to be really good. They seem to be better about the drunk driving. They take Ubers and they don't get in the car and drive, which is awesome.
Right.
But I will be driving and I will look over to my right and left, and I see people on their phones all the time, like all the time. And, I've even noticed when I'm driving, I'll see somebody kind of veering over into the lane. And, fortunately the cars now, if you drive a newer car, they have these warning systems that kind of, if you're drifting, they
now
really
you're touching
let you know.
on an old school versus new school topic.
Yes. Yeah.
I've actually had clients, around here, people have means. And I've had them say, I'm going to buy a brand new car for my child and give them every bell and whistle on the lane thingy and the cameras. And my first thought when she said that, this was a couple of years ago, was that's the absolute wrong thing to do. Old school is you learn to look over your shoulder, to use your blinker, to look in your blind spots. If the car's going to do it for you as a 16-year-old, 17 or 18-year-old, you're never going to get those habits. Now, for you and I, we've been ingrained in our brains, the new cars are a backup, are a secondary. And let's be honest, as we age, maybe we can't look over to our shoulder as much. And so there are people that literally just look for the light in their little side view mirror or whatever. If someone's going really fast or changing lanes, it's not perfect. And until we get self-driving cars like the Jetsons in the 70s we're going to do, it's just there's more cars. And honestly, another thing is you kind of touched on it. My first reaction when I see somebody that's talking on their phone is to get angry. That's my East Coast in me. But people take it another way. They beep their horn. They flip them off. Road rage.
Right. Yes.
How many times do you hear, and I don't watch the news, but it finds us on Google, that someone got shot in a road rage? Now, back in my day, you might have rear-ended them or punched them in the nose or something, but nobody got killed. And it's scary. And it's 15 and 16-year-olds. I mean, that's a whole other topic, but.
It is. It's like you have to really think twice before you let somebody know that you're not happy with them, because you don't know. Are they going to pull a gun, or are they going to?
Even on our way here today, I was on 405 and they have that double white line and someone crossed over and I looked and it was a BC plate. And my first thought was, okay, they're from Canada. Maybe they don't know the rules. Well, he or she did it 4 or 5 more times. And I was angry because the lanes he was coming out of were 0 to 10 miles an hour. And most of the people in my lane were going a good 50 or 60. Right. And he kept going in and out. And, you're not expecting someone to cross that double line.
No.
You literally, it's like an invisible fence. And there are rule abiders that think that no one's going to cross over that. Yeah. And what happens is you overreact and you go over to the left lane and then you hit somebody. Guess who's at fault now? So road rage, relying on safety mechanisms primarily, maybe I'm old. It doesn't teach good skills. And like I said, I have a 16 or 18-year-old and my children got hand-me-down cars with none of that stuff.
So they had to learn.
They had to learn. Yeah.
Well, and I even noticed, coming from that generation, my car has a great camera. I could literally look just straight ahead in the camera and see exactly what's behind me, but I still don't trust it. I'm still looking over my shoulder.
It's probably better than you, but you can't. I don't trust it either. I have a newer car now with that. And it's a backup for me.
Yes.
It's not my primary.
I still am worried about that example you gave of the person that just comes flying by that isn't going to hit the camera until it's directly behind you.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, one of the things that I would love to hear is like, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions about insurance is, just as a whole, and with homeowners, with auto, with, the personal umbrellas, I would love to hear, just because you must hear stories all day long about this.
And I'd love to write a book, Myths and Misconceptions. I'm not even smart enough to know the definitions of the two, but long story short, one of the biggest questions we get in the Northwest is we have a lot of windstorms and we have a lot of rain. Yeah. And in the winter, the soil gets soft and the wind comes up and it knocks trees down. And every single time someone has a tree fall, the first words out of their mouth are, my neighbor's tree fell on my house. What do I do? And it's funny. I have to say, your house, your problem. They're like, what do you mean? I go, well, what happens if the shoe was on the other foot? If your tree falls on their house, do you want to pay for that? And they're like, well, no, that's what insurance is for. I'm like, no. The rule of thumb is, unless the tree is dead and it's a known hazard and you have been neglectful, I don't use the word acts of God. That could be a slippery slope nowadays. But a windstorm with a perfectly good tree, the rule of thumb is your house, meaning your house got damaged, your problem. It doesn't matter who owns the tree. Back in my day, neighbors got along. They knew each other. They'd say, hey, that tree's looking like it's leaning a little bit. Or maybe it needs some leaves trimmed. Let's split the cost. We both win. I've even got calls, they're like, hey, I had that conversation with my neighbor. Which insurance company is going to pay for that? I'm like, well, we don't do preventative. That's the homeowner. Yeah. Our homes are our biggest asset more times than not. People, the pride of ownership has kind of declined, which is funny because my parents' house, I think they paid $20,000 to build it and they sold it for $100,000 30 years later. Nowadays, you pay $800,000 for a house and next year it's worth $100,000 more. So why not reinvest? But the myth is with trees is if it hits your house, it's your problem. The good news is your insurance will pay for it, less your deductible, and they'll pay to take it away. And there are times when the house is uninhabitable. And in that time, your biggest concern is where are we going to sleep tonight or where are we going to cook? Yeah. So every homeowner's policy with a traditional company includes what we call additional living expense, where it provides you to live elsewhere. Because you see these things on TV where an apartment complex is burned to the ground. Well, if you have renter's insurance, it also has loss of income. You can literally go to a hotel or an Airbnb that night and get paid for that because not only is your contents gone, but you need a place to live. And that apartment complex isn't getting built anytime soon, or rebuilt. So trees are a big myth. The biggest myth is hit and runs.
Interesting.
Which unfortunately, and I'm kind of getting back to society. Yeah. When your insurance is so expensive and you can barely afford it, if you hit a car while it's parked, even if you're a moral, law-abiding person, the scary part is, oh my God, I can't afford my insurance now. What am I going to do if I turn in a claim? And so unfortunately, there's been an uptick in uninsured motorists. Hit and run. Now, a person may have insurance, but unless we can locate that person, you're stuck holding the bag.
And it's covered under uninsured motorists.
It's covered under underinsured motorists, which in Washington is only a $300 deductible. But there are people that do not turn in the claim because the myth is anytime I call my insurance agent, my rates go up. It's just not true. My first word is,
I think that is common.
Well, yeah. I mean, they joke anytime they talk to Pete, it goes up. And I'm like, well, that's not really how it works. Ideally, it goes down if we have a good conversation. But my point is they will self-insure for it, meaning they'll fix the car themselves instead of letting the insurance take care of it. Because the rule of thumb is if you're not at fault, it doesn't affect your rates. Now, there are some companies with profitability issues that are starting to trickle into glass and windshields being responsible, but not to toot my own horn, but Allstate doesn't charge for that right now. And I hope in my career it never happens, but
Yeah.
there is a move to that.
That's an important one because I think that is definitely a misconception that people think that, oh gosh, if I call, it's for sure.
You're the victim here.
It's going to be,
Yeah. And so isn't the insurance company, because you're going to pay $300 and they're going to pay the other 99%.
Well, and that's another reason why you have a relationship. You have an insurance agent, not just an insurance company, an actual agent you can call and talk with about that. Yeah. I mean, what are some of the big mistakes you see people make too that really can impact them financially because they're undercovered? They don't have the proper coverage for their financial and living situation.
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. One of them is that pride of ownership term. It's called preventative. We're all in this together. The less claims you and I have, I don't think most people even know the definition of insurance. It's a pool of risk.
Yeah.
You put all these people in the pool, and the cleaner the risks are, the less claims you have, the cleaner the water is. When the water gets dirty, because we've had a lot of claims, we have to put cleaning in or more money in is maybe the better example. So if we can all work together and do these things, and they're simple. Change the batteries in your smoke detector. We all know to do it. Even myself. We're supposed to do it every time you move the clocks forward and move the clocks back. Did you ever hear that one?
No, I didn't.
That was like what they did back in the day. You didn't have a fancy calendar to remind you. It was like, okay. Because, so you just change out the batteries.
Yeah.
Another thing is, around here, we have beautiful trees. Well, they drop leaves, and leaves fill up gutters. And a lot of water claims with basements or older homes, the basement will flood, and it's not because we had hard rain. We have hard rain all the time. It's about mitigating it. So have you cleaned your downspouts? Have you cleaned your gutters? Now on the ground, have you cleaned away from the drains? Because if the drain gets clogged, it's got nowhere to go other than your basement. And water is like rats. They'll find any opening there is.
Yeah. Water is.
So back to what you said, though, about that, the things people don't do is they panic and call the insurance company directly to make a claim. And especially if you don't have an agent, who else are you going to call? Having an agent, I always joke, 1-800-CALL-PETE. So call me. Is this covered? No, it's not. Well, why not? I'll talk to you about it. Because the last thing you want to do is turn a claim in, incur all these costs, and then find out it's not a covered claim and possibly have your rates go up because you filed a claim.
Yeah.
So we as agents like to work with the consumer because we don't expect you to know all this. I don't know everything about technology. I don't know everything about painting a house, obviously, either. So at the end of the day, if you can just do the little things, trim the trees back from your house, clean out the gutters, change your smoke detectors, check your hose bibs. We do have global warming, but we've had plenty of people I think it's $5 to buy one of those things at Home Depot. It's my Home Depot
in the
plug.
winter, so your pipes don't
just stick it on there. Yeah. I mean, all it takes is one cold freeze. It doesn't have to be 365 days out of the year. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because you'll see like checklists and that are out there that kind of say, okay, these are things you should do as just regular maintenance. But people can really be financially just demolished if they don't have coverage. They don't have proper coverage.
That was the other one you had mentioned I wanted to get to. So a lot of people, especially in the last 10 years or so, have bought their first home and it wasn't their dream home because they couldn't afford a dream home. But over time, as the home values went up, they could borrow against it and do upgrades. We had the California effect where people moved up here and they bought a modest home and would tear it down or rebuild it or repair it. Nobody thinks to call their insurance company. There used to be something called guaranteed replacement. Well, the word guarantee comes with a cost. Anything I can guarantee you it costs more than something without a guarantee, right?
Yes.
So your home insurance, your dwelling protection, your coverage to rebuild your home is fluid. Even if you haven't done anything to your home, the cost of materials to build a home or rebuild a home have gone up way more than inflation. We use that word inflation too loosely. We all know gas went up when groceries went up, but sheetrock 2x6s, plywood, things that are not sexy when you're remodeling your home, but you need or rebuilding or repairing.
Yeah.
Those have gone up. And like you said, the artisans that are putting those things in your homes have gone up. So if you're not talking to your insurance agent every 3 to 5 years, I'm not talking about every 6 months or every year, the policy may have fallen behind. I have customers that have the same home policy for 30 years. Now, the coverage does go up a little bit. We have a cost inflation.
Yeah.
But it doesn't keep up, and it doesn't know about remodels.
But like if you do a massive, kitchen remodel, or you do, a big, house remodel, it's maybe a $500,000 or $1 million remodel, or 50,000 or 100,000. It doesn't really matter the amount. You should be calling your insurance agent and saying, hey, I've done this remodel.
Right. What do I need to do, if anything?
Right. So that I'm covered in case, something comes up, and also just specialty things, like jewelry, expensive jewelry if you have in the house, or art that you have in the house. And I thought was interesting about how it affects you if you have something like those electric scooters that I'd love to have you kind of go into more detail on that.
Yeah. So homeowners insurance, and this is back to the myths, is not intended. First of all, it's roughly $1,000 to $2,000 a year product. When I first started, it was $400 a year for homeowners insurance. Of course, the homes were smaller and more modest. But what's happening today is homeowners insurance covers the house. We talked about that, covers liability. But now there are things inside your home, and not everyone has the same stuff. Back in the day, we all had board games and we had this and that, and none of it was very sexy to steal. I think my Atari 5200 was like the most expensive thing in our house, and that would have never got stolen because it was tied to me 24/7. But nowadays there's way more fun things to steal from your home that, quite frankly, can be turned into cash. We were coming up with alternate transportation. Well, e-bikes.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, we had a 3-speed, it was a $100 bike.
Yeah.
Well, I have friends that have mountain bikes, not e-bikes, that are $5,000 or $10,000. You can actually buy collision coverage on a bike like you can on a car.
Wow.
It's optional, and it's something you have to know to ask for. But e-bikes threw this on steroids. So now you have a $10,000 bike, but it's not considered personal property like a TV, a couch, a laptop. And so insurance doesn't cover it because it falls under what we call a motorized land vehicle. It's literally a land vehicle. It doesn't fly. Had to tell a customer that. And it's motorized. We think of that as a golf cart, right? Or a moped or something. Well, it's really a moped, essentially. So there are companies that we can sell those policies to, but unfortunately people find out whether it's covered or not after the bike's been stolen. And it's not a $200 bike. It's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. A lot of people know that jewelry is limited. They don't know for how much or for what. They'll know about that. But the good news is tech gadgets aren't limited. Quite frankly, a lot of the policies were written in the 90s and these gadgets weren't even known. So over time, those might get incorporated in. Just like we didn't have a way to account for e-bikes because we never imagined them. There is a doctrine that's with the insurance commission that says we don't cover motorized land vehicles. And unfortunately, whether you agree or not, it is considered one. And so there are specialty insurance companies that we can get coverage for that.
Interesting.
Same like you can with jewelry.
Yeah, and that's kind of how as trends happen and things evolve, that gets worked in where there's these new things that come up that you think, but that's the thing. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I mean, it's in my house, so it would be covered, and it's not necessarily covered. I know one question I get a ton from people is all about earthquake insurance.
Okay.
And I would love to have you touch on that because that is a super common question.
Earthquake and flood kind of go hand in hand. Mortgage companies, when you get a traditional mortgage, will run a flood certification that I'm sure you're fully aware of. And that will tell you whether it's in a flood zone, and if so, which zone. And we work off of that with FEMA. So it's either going to be you have to have it or you don't have to have it. Very rarely do people buy flood insurance in Western Washington. Quite honestly, most floods are urban flooding where you have not, it's groundwater. It hits the ground and comes in.
Okay.
Back to the trees and cleaning out your gutters and stuff. There are certain things you can do.
Yeah.
The good news is those aren't catastrophic. It might make a mess in your garage or your your basement, and ruin your carpeting, but it won't be the end of the world. Earthquake is a very large deductible, which scares people away. It's traditionally a 10 to 15% deductible, which doesn't sound like a lot out of 100. But if an average 2,000 square foot home costs about $600,000 to rebuild. So your coverage would be $600,000. Your deductible would be $600,000 times 15. That's $90,000.
Yeah.
I was here for the 2001 Nisqually earthquake, and the only ones that I heard about other than downtown where they were brick, old, and commercial. So none of that's covered by traditional insurance companies. Yeah. Those are where the main damages were. There were people that lost their chimneys, which ruined their roof. But if you're the average home and you have a $90,000 deductible, even if you have a $50,000 deductible. So it's a really hard thing. The funny thing is, it's usually where your personal experience comes from. If you grew up in California, you'd never buy a house without earthquake.
Yeah.
If you grow up in Texas or Oklahoma, you're worried about wind or hail. So earthquake is something that's probably, along with life insurance, one of the most under purchased products that we sell. Flood is good because there are some check systems where the mortgage company require it, but little did most people know, the most insurance you can get under FEMA is $250,000.
Wow.
Okay, I have a house in Coeur d'Alene that's 1,800 square feet. I just remodeled it. It's about $600,000 to rebuild. Sure, the whole house may not disappear, but $250,000 doesn't. I mean, most houses on that lake are a heck of a lot bigger than mine. So even having flood is better than nothing, but it's not. It's not going to cover the whole home. So
yeah, it's interesting because it's a common question to get up here with earthquake, and a lot of times it is people that have relocated, like from California. But it's like most of the time the damage isn't going to even be enough to cover what the deductible is. No, sounds like.
And so the deductible, if I led with that like I did in this conversation, that just gets people to say, "Yuck, I'm not going to do it."
Yeah.
So as a good salesperson, I don't do that. The cost is actually quite negligible. It's usually the same or less than your homeowner's insurance. Now, you can look at that as doubling your cost, or you can look at it that if and when we have a big one, it won't be a $10,000 claim.
Yeah.
It'll be $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. So a $90,000 deductible, you could probably get a home equity line of credit or tip into your savings. You know, if you're a homeowner, let's be honest, that's not a lot of money. 90%. So if it's a 15% deductible, you have a 100% deductible if you don't have the coverage.
That's true.
There are some areas that are more expensive, but that's statistically based on the ground and areas like that. But a general rule is whatever your homeowner's cost, the earthquake would be the same or a little bit less.
Okay.
So it's not going to be. I mean, I just did a quote yesterday that it was in Linwood. It was $500 a year.
Oh wow!
And I was actually asking him why he had it. And then he goes, well, I'm paying X amount. And then when I did my quote, it was $500. I'm like, again, that's the cost of an umbrella policy.
Right.
So,
yeah, if it's not, yeah, definitely. So again, it's just a conversation with the insurance agent to see, okay, is my house located in an area? Because I would imagine like somebody who's, maybe in Seattle or closer to the water or a certain area might be more prone.
You hit on that. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, even car insurance and home insurance differs from city to city. There's what we call town classes or rated zip codes. Yeah. But without getting too deep in the woods, the three most expensive places that I know in Western Washington, and this is a Western Washington phenomenon more than Central or Eastern, where they're dealing with forest fires.
Yeah.
Mukilteo, West Seattle, and Magnolia are all kind of peninsulas are out by the water, and all three of them are much more expensive. Now, they're also more expensive areas. Yeah. Going to have nicer homes. But ironically, even Queen Anne, Green Lake, where it's the land is different, you know.
Yeah.
I'm no scientist, but that's really the difference on that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's different areas of this country have different, you've got the hurricanes
Right.
down in the southeast, you've got, tornadoes, and you've got flooding that happens and earthquakes up here.
Yeah.
It's also so interesting. Yeah, I mean, one thing I would love to hear from you is like with first-time homebuyers, people just getting into the market, they're trying to get their foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say would be your best advice to a first-time homebuyer to really be prepared
Mm-hmm.
to protect their investment from an insurance standpoint?
I get that question a lot. As a mortgage broker, if you're working with a renter who's trying to, just like we're raising our kids, if you're trying to put them on the best path forward, I can't stress this enough. Whether you like it or not, credit is a huge variable on your premiums.
Okay.
Now, let's be honest. Most people buying homes have good credit, but nowadays, as you know, if you just pay a little bit more, anyone can buy a house.
Yeah.
So the first thing I tell young people is get your resume in order.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't already have renter's insurance, get renter's insurance. There's two reasons. A, it's optional.
Okay.
So if you've taken the forthrightness or whatever the word is on that, to get it puts you in a better risk category. It also creates history. So when you go to buy a home, you're going to get what we call home claim-free discount. Well, if you don't have renter's insurance, it didn't mean you didn't have any claims. You just couldn't make any. Mm-hmm. So literally some companies will give you a better price if you have renter's insurance.
Interesting.
And it's a permanent pricing factor. It'll pay for itself.
That's
so get your credit as good as you can get. It's not about how much money you make or spend. It's about how you manage your money. Credit is not like people think I have plenty of rich people that have lousy credit. The more they make, the more they can spend. Having said that, that can bite you in the behind. If you do have a small break-in in your car, this is where the 1-800-CALL-PETE comes in. And let's say you have $500 worth of stuff stolen from your car. If you call the insurance company and put a claim in, first of all, you're going to have a deductible that's probably $250 or $500. Mm-hmm. Well, that sticks with you because now you have a claim. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people say, well, what good is insurance? Well, it's catastrophic. $250 payout is not catastrophic. And it is, you're probably not looking to buy a home.
Right.
The other thing I would say is if you're on a budget, you can't control what zip code the home's in. That's not a big determinant. The newer home is going to cost less to insure, but it's going to cost more to buy.
Yeah.
You probably say this to your people, just buy what's within your reason. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You can always remodel it. You can't move it. I guess you can, but it costs a lot. So buy something that's within your means, maybe fix it up. Mm-hmm. As you do that, preventative, new roof, electrical, plumbing, the things that can burn down or ruin your home. We all want sexy countertops or we want nice flooring, and those are great, but they're not going to impact your loss likelihood, I guess. So clean the roof. No one, by the way, you can pay someone to do it. It's $300 or $400. I just had it done in my roof. Yeah. I used to do it myself, but I'm getting a little scared going up on a wet roof. And that's one of those jump over a dollar to pick up a penny kind of thing or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, save nickels to spend dollars. Yep. Yeah, no, it's amazing. You can get people that'll just come and clean the roof and make sure it's clean. It doesn't have a bunch of brush on it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Like this, you're a wealth of knowledge. I know that people are going to pick up some gems in our conversation. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And please, as always, reach out with any kind of questions. And remember, please like, share, and subscribe.